Hola amigos de Overdrive, seguimos en nuestra aventura por los Estados Unidos. Ahora manejamos 3 horas, en verdad yo no manejé, yo me quedé dormido al tiro, pero manejamos hasta el estado de Maryland, que queda a 3 horas aproximadamente de Nueva York, para visitar un lugar muy especial que ya vamos llegando y ahí ustedes lo pueden ver de qué se trata. Así es, nos invitaron a la fábrica de PRS, donde vamos a brindarles 2 capítulos del blog de Mister Overdrive. El primero va a ser el Factory Tour y el segundo, que es algo que me tiene súper nervioso, que es una entrevista con Paul Reed Smith en persona. Así que ya vamos llegando, prepárense.
So this is the first stop where essentially all of the wood is going to come into the factory here. We call this area rough cut. We have several off-site locations for wood milling. We will source wood locally and also all around the world. We try to purchase everything seasonally. So when it's available and when there are trees that have good figuring available, we will source them and keep them at our off-site wood facility locations. When we get enough orders for something, we'll bring in enough material. We have 2 gentlemen that work in our rough cut area that process up to 5,000 to 6,000 board feet of material every week. So mahogany, maple, rosewood, ebony, and a number of variety of other wood species such as ash, alder, even zeracote, bubinga, paduk, all sorts of different exotic woods that we use for many different types of guitars. But the primary ones are going to be made with mahogany and maple.
Yeah.
The 2 gentlemen in here will process some of that board material into pretty much usable blanks, and we will stick stack it just like those maple blanks there. We'll color code it based on the grade of wood, and the first step is ultimately to dry it down to a specific moisture content. So that way we can ensure that the wood is stable. It's not going to move as a result of any sort of changes in atmospheric humidity. Right behind you here, you can see these large garage doors are actually temperature-controlled heating rooms. Similarly to how those maple pallets are stacked, we have stacks of mahogany and maple in these. At around 107 degrees Fahrenheit, we're going to bring the moisture content of the wood. It'll get into the factory at around 12 to 14%, and we'll try to bring it down below the threshold at around, I believe, 4 or 5% moisture content. So driving the water out of the wood to dry it. The fingerboards, such as rosewood and ebony material, they are in a little bit different temperature. Dried down to a little bit hotter, so that way we can drive that moisture content down to around 2%. Reason being that you don't want the fingerboard to shrink and the fret ends to start popping out. You want to make sure that the guitar is comfortable to play and doesn't need a lot of servicing for the life of the instrument ultimately. So we could probably take a walk this way and see some of the rough cutting process, which involves essentially cutting boards into the length of a guitar body. Either a guitar body or a guitar neck. You're going to get that rough dimension. I believe it's around 18 inches in length for a guitar body, and probably around 30 inches or so for a guitar neck. And these 2 gentlemen are in charge of it all. They will date the wood as it comes into the factory. They will grade it initially, So if it's a private stock grade top, they'll mark it with a certain color. If it's a 10 top, they'll mark it with a certain color, and then it'll go down the line. And things are constantly graded throughout the process.
Okay.
So if something looks really good after we carve it, then maybe it'll get upgraded to be a better guitar.
Oh, that's right.
And so on and so forth. Once the wood is dried down to the proper moisture content, we'll take that pallet and we'll move it out these garage doors here. And we start to schedule production of the various models that are produced here in our factory. You can see every cut of wood is going to have a date, it's going to have a color code, and it's going to have a code as well for what batch it's part of. The individual that works out here will get a list, say X amount of these models, you know, X amount of customs, special semi-hollows, and they'll begin to kit up the wood necessary to begin the body build process. Body build process is a little bit more simplistic, or a little bit simpler than the neck building process, obviously. You start with a solid mahogany back. These actually look to be some swamp ash backs, probably for a wood library guitar. I'm a fan of the swamp ash as well. The tops we'll go through an edge joining process. It starts as a solid book of mahogany. We'll resaw that wood so that it creates a book matched top. We will edge join both sides to make sure that the wood goes together, and you know, we have the curl that's lining up. We'll make a mark on it, make sure that the book match is properly aligned, and then it'll go over to glue up for the top. The top will be glued up separately. We use a radio frequency gluing process where there's a chemical additive essentially to the glue, and we'll send a radio signal through the wood to allow the glue to cure a little bit quicker, so we can get the glue joint for the top done real quickly. And then when we put the top on top of the mahogany back, we'll put that into a hydraulic press that'll apply, I believe, around 4 tons of pressure from the top to the back to make sure that all those glue joints for the top and back are going to hold strong for the life of the instrument. Weed through here. Here we've got a variety of maple tops. You can see there's all kinds of different curl that can happen. It's amazing to me that this is a naturally occurring thing, and that we're able to source this type of wood for all the guitars that we build. It really makes the color pop. It makes our guitars stand out, and I think it's really what makes PRS a PRS. Here you can actually see there's a top that's been glued together and it's had its rough peripheral shape cut out. That's pretty much the last step before they will press that onto a mahogany back. So the tops will go through a thickness sander, make sure that they're the proper thickness before they're attached to the back. Once that's all done, we will do a rough perimeter cut of the guitar body, just to get the essential shape, the horns and the bottom curve, and then it'll go over to our CNC carve programs. Essentially, building a guitar requires starting with a neck and starting with the guitar body. Eventually, those two will be wed together to create a finished instrument. So a lot of the parts of the neck building process do start right here. This would be our inlay cell. We have some small cuts of wood here for headstock veneers and for the fingerboards. And we have some CNC machines that are capable of cutting the very small cavities for both the headstock veneer inlay and for the fingerboard bird inlays. I always like to point out that we have a pretty wide variety of inlay options that we can use on private stock and wood library guitars. So it's a lot of fun to check things out in this area and see all the many different options. Some of the necks we're looking at here are just getting ready for final assembly. for the neck and the body to go together. So this area merges a little bit into neck and body assembly. So when we get done with the fingerboards, they'll be delivered over to glue up for neck and fingerboard glue up. We can take a walk down this hallway and sort of see how the necks begin. So we have two main processes for building a guitar neck. And you start either with a larger piece of material. I believe this is a 12 quarter. I could be mistaken about that, but it's a thicker chunk of wood. And this will end up with what we call essentially a one-piece neck. Not that it's made entirely out of one piece, but it starts as a solid piece of wood that we'll then do a recess cut on to get the general shape of the neck and the heel and the headstock angle, followed by doing a cavity for the truss rod. We'll install the truss rod, we'll put a piece of wood over the truss rod and secure that to make sure that it's staying in the right position and doing its job essentially as you make adjustments. We'll glue the fingerboard on with a fire hose type press, make sure that there's even pressure applied across the entire fingerboard. And as it goes through these processes, you can kind of see, we'll glue the earpieces on, we'll do the perimeter cut, we'll do the initial cut for the headstock, and then later on do the final cut for the headstock to make that shape. We'll also do the radius of the fingerboard through the CNC machine. And then it'll go over to our neck team where it'll have essentially all of the front and back and the fingerboard sanded, brought to spec, and frets installed, and make sure everything's good to go. The S2 neck process is very similar. Once you get to this point, it's essentially the same. We just begin with a 5-quarter piece of wood, which is a little bit thinner, allows us to use less material, and allows us to get it done a little bit quicker because we're able to cut off an angled piece for that. This will essentially start as one piece of wood. We'll make that cut, we'll flip it around, we'll glue it to the other end there, and that becomes your headstock angle. The heel be cut off that end and then attached there. So that way you have the additional wood necessary to make the neck. And it results in a strong joint that you call a scarf joint. And that's arguably a little bit stronger than just wood itself. So we create a very strong neck. We use a little less material, and we can create the same sturdy, good feeling neck out of in a little bit quicker time. The throughput time, because we're starting with a smaller piece of wood, there's a little bit less of a tendency for the wood to react to changes in atmospheric humidity, so on and so forth. So the throughput time for an S2 neck should only be anywhere from 7 to 10 days. Whereas with the core neck, it does take a little more time. When you relieve so much material from the back of this neck, we want to make sure that it has time to acclimate in case it's going to move or flex. Back over to the body team. This is one of our main areas for sanding bodies. It's also the main area for the final sand. So when the neck and the body go together, we do give it a final sand to make sure that there are no scratches in the wood, no rough spots, everything feels soft and comfortable and contoured, and that it's ready for stain and for color. So there are some guitars here that do have some color to them. They may have been caught in the QC process to come back for some additional sanding by some of our team members here.
In there with their name on it.
Oh yeah.
It says Overdrive. I thought maybe we'd think of it as shipping.
Yeah.
You can do it like just a quick
right
here.
Why not? So yeah, this would be primarily sanding bodies. And in a moment here, we'll take a look at the CNC carve process for both the necks and for the bodies. Most of the initial sanding will be done up to either 220 or 320 grit. We get it just sanded enough so that it's smooth to the touch, but it does have to have a coarseness so that it can hold a finish in the first process of the finish. So take a look in here. Sort of the end all to be all where things do get shipped out. So we'll make our way back over to the CNC carve programs for the necks and for the guitar bodies. This is a really good thing, I think, to get a closer look at. This is the beginning, the sort of the hallway of CNC neck operations. You can see some of those necks that have gone through that first initial back cut to get the headstock angle and to get the heel block there. We have racks that will are essentially there for built-in queue time between each process. So, like we saw previously, we'll do the initial perimeter cut, we'll do the truss rod, and we'll allow for 1 to 2 days of queue time in between each of those carve processes, just to allow the neck to move if it's going to move. There's nothing worse than if you were to put the guitar neck down onto some sort of rig where you were doing a carve and it's not straight, and you do the cut and you take it off the jig, and all of a sudden it'll spring back into the position that it was. We want to make sure that any sort of cuts around the neck are done precisely, and that the neck isn't going to do any movement after that. So we could probably take a quick look at this one down here. Looks like it's got some carves going on. Looks like it's doing the final contour carve for the neck there. Those would be some S2 models. So there's a scarf joint and a heel block on those. So we've got a variety of jigs depending on the model. Those are used to essentially hold the guitar body down during the CNC carving process. What begins as either a solid mahogany back, or in this case, this looks like a single cut with a solid maple top, a solid mahogany back. That's what will essentially go into the CNC machine. And then begins the carve process right over here. These are our new Doosan machines. They can hold a tolerance of up to 5/1000ths of an inch for the main perimeter carves. For the carves for the through holes or for the neck pocket, we can hold a tolerance of up to 2/1000ths of an inch, which is incredibly tight. Which is really what we're going after. We want extremely tight tolerances for any sort of joint or glue joint with the guitar. A tighter tolerance means, better vibration transfer, better sustain, and ultimately a louder and a better sounding guitar. So that's our goal in the end, and using these new Doosan machines has really helped us to get a little closer to that specification. This is actually a guitar body after it's done its final carving process. So we'll put it in there, we'll do the initial cut for the back, for the controls, for the tremolo. And then we'll do the violin carve for the top here. And you can see there are some light machining marks, but what was previously done with tools such as like a dupla carver and a pin router, these machines with computer automation and being able to get down to such a tighter specification, we can get it down to pretty much the final carve that we want, so that there's only a little bit of rough texture to have to sand away. So it makes the process for our sanders a lot less physically demanding, and just it allows us to make, you know, beautiful carved tops in a little bit quicker process. The hollow bodies are a little bit different, so a bit more of a multi-step process. If you start with a maple top, in order to do those internal carves, we'll put the maple top in there by itself and do the internal carves, and then this will be then glued to the top of the guitar and do the top carves. So the guitars that do take a little bit longer, just considering the process, would be something like a hollow body guitar or a semi-hollow guitar that require just a few extra steps to make sure that the inside cavities are done right. S2 guitars, looks like this is a standard model here, do a little bit different of a carve. They don't have a violin carve, but they feature the bevel cut. So still comfortable to play, but a little bit easier to process in and out. Just a little bit softer of a line. This is a solid mahogany body, so what we saw as, you know, a solid piece of mahogany back there is carved into this, and that's essentially all there is to it. Then once all the machining is done, every part, every body, every neck goes through an intense hand sanding process. And for instance, we got our very skilled craftsman here doing some fretboard leveling. So he's got a straight edge there. He's going to check it up against that bright LED light. He wants to make sure that there is not a flash of light coming through there. If the fretboard's entirely flat, then we go to do the fret pressing in an arbor press. Every fret is going to be hand pressed by hand. We'll snip off the fret ends and we'll bevel the side of the fretboard using a belt sander there to make sure that the frets aren't sticking out, they're not sharp, the neck's comfortable to play. Once the frets are installed, the fretboard's level, and the ends have been beveled, it'll be handed off. We'll have a veneer glued onto the headstock if it's applicable. Some models don't get a headstock veneer. And then it'll be going to our neck sanders. So we'll do the back of the neck, we'll do the headstock, they'll do any sharp ends that might be happening. Essentially, they'll sand the entire neck down except for the heel. The heel, we try to keep that specification right where it's at until it is in final body and neck construction. We do an interference fit for the neck, so the neck is a little oversized for the neck pockets until they are installed in the guitar by the technicians that bring them down to spec. To our right, briefly, we can see this is actually our private stock department, and just some of our more long tenured workers, guys that have been here for 10, 20, 30 years sometimes, with, you know, a lot of experience with doing multiple jobs. So whether it be some of the responsibilities of the neck team, some of the responsibilities of the body team, typically these guys have been doing it for a long time and they're really good at it. So any of the custom order special projects that come through, they're usually in charge of one or more than one aspect of that guitar. Walk in here, there's some cool stuff over here. Some private stock guitars that look like they're in process. That one's pretty crazy. In the back of it there. That's, I believe, a bit of a burl top, and we'll do a resin fill with blue there. So, but I can't even imagine what it's going to look like when it's done. This would be what a neck essentially looks like right before it's handed off to neck and body assembly. So this is after the neck team has done all their work. Headstock veneer has been attached. Everything's sanded smooth. So you can't feel any fret ends there. I mean, it's super soft. The carve is really comfortable. And it's basically ready to be put into a guitar body and handed on down to the next process. So. And as we move this way, we can start to see some things that look like finished guitars with actual color on them. So some of the processes are a little back and forth. So this is primarily the wood shop here, but when we do an initial base coat, we do bring some of those guitar bodies back out here for an initial base coat sand. We try to keep the dust all in one area, you know, so where they're applying finish, we try not to have any dust or any sanding going on in those areas. This actually here marks the line of the old building and the new building. So we were previously working exclusively out of this side of the factory here. This building used to contain all of the wood shop, all of the rough cut, all of the, you know, the carve process, along with the finish, the final assembly. And then I believe it was around 2000 or maybe even the late 90s that we were, the demand was just kind of climbing. And so we built a large amount of factory space over here just to maintain the wood shop area of all the guitar building that we're doing here. This then became the beginning of the finish hall, which I'll show you. So right in this area is going to be the beginning of finish prep. So we'll do a grain fill process for any porous wood on the back. We'll do a stain process for the tops, variety of different stain colors. We do have a couple different processes on how we achieve some of those colors, either by sanding out a color and applying another one over top, or by blending colors in a number of different ways. We'll do grain fill just to make sure that the finish is smooth and there aren't any pinholes. We use a nitrocellulose top coat and a CAB base coat. CAB stands for a cellulose acetate butyrate. It's essentially an acrylic base coat that allows those top coats to finish with a nice luster without a lot of orange peel, and it sort of makes the finishing process pretty smooth and easy for us. Next here, looks like they're getting a quick nitro shot as well, just so that way they can be nice and sealed for down the road when they get assembled. A very aqua looking top here with blue. I like that. That's got some really cool looking figure in it there. That's probably a wood library guitar. We have actually a robot that does our initial base coat spraying there. It'll handle the first coats of CAB finish that are applied. We'll do, I believe, 5 passes of finish for the initial base coat. We want to make sure that the finish on our guitars is of a very thin specification. Paul and his research teams have done a lot of development just to figure out what's the best kind of finish and what's the best way to do it on our guitars. And we found that, you know, a very thin finish with sort of a very hard cure at the end is what allows the guitar to resonate and sustain at its fullest potential. So we try to keep that finish as thin as possible when we're finishing it up. So these look like they have an initial base coat on them, so they have a little bit of a gloss to them. color coats, and so if we're doing the back a different color, those will be done down the line. So a lot of preparatory work done in this area, mainly by very skilled people with like eagle eyes, you know, masking off binding, making sure that any finish isn't going to get in the area of the guitar where we don't want it to be. So. Moving along here, we are seeing some of those final base coat preparations. So we're masking off the fretboard, we're masking off the binding, and making sure everything is prim and proper and ready for its final color or for its final clear top coat. See some of our set neck models coming in here, and also some of the opaque bolt-on models. Once the finish is almost done, we do add that serial number to the back of the headstock by hand before we put the final top coat on. And then once the final top coat has been applied, it'll go to the final sanding. We'll sand the last pass of finish, I think, starting at 1500 grit, a sort of a wet sand process, up to 3000 to make sure that it's ready for buffing. We can get a nice flat surface that's going to buff to a nice sheen. And at the same time, we'll take care of the fretboard, make sure that all the fret ends are properly dressed and soft, and also brought to a high polish, so that way it's nice and playable and slick for the guy that's gonna take it out of the case when he first gets it. There are some private stock guitars here. Looks like they're coming out of top coat, and man, they are astonishing. Yeah. Especially that last one. As we make our way into here, we're going to see some guitars that look like they are fully shined. These are probably just getting along in the process. So looks like they have their serial numbers written on them. And they're just getting their final finish preparation before we'll hand it over to buff and turn around. Part of the workbench setup I always thought was really cool was just the way we have the vacuum tables set up here. So any sanding process is going to have a vacuum pulling all of the debris and sanding dust down into the table. Just sort of keeps things a little bit more tidy and a little bit easier for the people that work here. I was actually the guy that was doing hand leveling. Yeah. There's a factory tour video that features me from back in the day, and I think Jack called me a skilled craftsman. I was like, oh yeah, that was me. They'll make their way down the process, they'll get nice and shiny, they'll get any sort of overlay on the headstock if we have a signature overlay on that. And one last look of the finished guitar body and neck before it gets handed over to our electronics and setup department for kitting of the electronics. A lot of our models do use some proprietary electronics just to ensure that the sound is exactly what we're going for. So a lot of different parts back there. We do wind our own pickups in-house. So we can make our way this way and see how some of that is done. So these guitars here look like they are on the turnaround bench here. So depending on which way they're facing, we'll basically tell the next department whether or not it's ready to go. Some of them might have a little mark on it, maybe to point out that something is not quite exactly as we would like it. So that would then go back in the process to be corrected, either buffed or resanded or reapply finish if necessary in some cases. But we try to catch everything as early in the process as possible. So there are many QC points starting in the wood shop You know, you take ownership of your work to make sure that everybody's doing what they have to do. Once it's good to go, it looks perfect. They got the kit all built for it. Essentially, there's a birth date, sort of a sticker inside the guitar that has a barcode, and when they scan that barcode, it'll basically say this needs one of these, one of these, one of that, one volume pot, one tone pot, one 5-way switch, you know, a 33 picofarad capacitor, this, that, and the other. Everything they need goes in a little kit here, and I believe hardware is installed. So the tuners and the bridge will be installed, the pickups will be installed, and then it'll be handed off to another individual for the final assembly of the electronics, and then the final setup of the guitar, install the nut, put the strings on, and stretch them out, make sure everything's working and playing great. I mentioned briefly that we do wind our own pickups in-house. We'll source the bobbins, the plastic parts used for those from a proprietary manufacturer, and then we'll have the pickups wound here in-house with CNC machines. Similarly to the body carve and neck carve programs, we want to make sure that everything is precisely as we designed it. We are a stickler on keeping to the specifications, and every model has essentially its own pickup that's gonna sound unique and provide a certain sound for that guitar. So once the guitar is all finished up with electronics and strings, we'll pass it off to the next team, which is gonna be your final QC check. It's gonna be right this way. If it makes it through this room, it will make it to the customer, essentially. We've got some long tenured guys in here that have been doing this for some time. They know exactly what to look for on every guitar. So any spots on the neck, fretboard, front and back of the guitar, if the electronics aren't working, I think they are going to add any sort of back plates to the guitar. Any last minute finish touch-ups or corrections to the parts or the setup of the guitar, they're going to take care of it. And then they're going to walk it through that doorway and get it ready for casing. Casing guys will wipe it down, make sure it's spotless, a mirror buff, and then put it in the case, stack it up, and hand it off to shipping. So that essentially wraps up the production of US PRS guitars from start to finish. It's pretty quick, I think. Once it gets through the wood shop and finish is applied, it's like, oh, that's really all there is to it. It's just a guitar, you know. So yeah, and you can see some of the pictures I think that they take for our Instagram are always like right here. I think Private Stock Fridays, come down here and take a picture of that there. That's a nice looking Santana there.
That's pretty cool. Is it tiger yellow?
Either orange or yellow.
Right.
I think it's orange.
Yeah, it's orange tiger.
Orange tiger.
Orange tiger.
Yeah. I've got a Bonnie Pink smoke burst behind that one. Yep. Got some buffing wheels in there in case we need to do any last minute buffing, make sure everything is prim and proper, nice and shiny. So this is our private stock acoustic area. We do make anywhere from I think 2 to 5 or 2 to 4 acoustics per month, which is not a lot in comparison to the solid body or hollow body electric guitars that we're building. We have, I believe, one gentleman that does most of that private stock acoustic building. He's right over there. We could actually go over there and take a look at what he's doing now if you'd like. It's pretty cool. Like he's got one, he's applying some binding there to a private stock acoustic order, and the handwork that is involved with the building of acoustic guitars just astounds me. It's definitely a different process altogether. It's almost like a whole different instrument. But you can see some of the ones that are in process there. We've got the sides all selected here. They haven't been bent yet. We've got some that have got tops and backs maybe, and we got one here that looks like a full guitar, and some necks and fretboards in the queue as well. So, always experimenting. So the SE series started as, I believe it was a student edition guitar, and it started with Santana, who at the time was our main artist, and he wanted a guitar that was a little bit more affordable for the average player, and so we started working initially with World Musical Instruments. They were based out of Korea, and we'll follow David right this way. World Musical Instruments had worked with us, I believe, up until around 2018, making the SE models. And more recently, we started working with Cortec out of China and out of Indonesia. A great company to work with. They've been more than willing to come on board and do things the PRS way. And we've been producing instruments, the hollow body and the acoustic instruments are produced by Cortec China. And then all the solid body SE acoustic or solid body SE electric guitars are going to be produced by Cortec Indonesia. And so we've been able to expand the SE line and introduce a lot of new models with the introduction of that partnership, and including the SE Silver Sky, the SE McCarty 594 that was recently released, and here's where all those guitars will go through their final QC check before being reboxed and essentially delivered to the dealer. So a lot of these guys are just super skilled guitar players, guitar setup guys, and their life is, you know, take a guitar out of a box, make sure it's playing like a PRS. If it's not, is there something we can do to fix that and address it? And if it's beyond our repair, then we won't sell it as a PRS guitar. We want to make sure everything is playing and operating exactly how the guitars downstairs do. So, minus the wood shop and minus the finish hall, this is essentially the final assembly and completion of a PRS guitar here. So these guys have a lot of skills and know exactly what they're looking for here. So acoustic models and electric models. So they're checking a variety of things in and out. So they've got spec sheets at the bench there, making sure everything is sounding exactly how it should. And every now and then I'll come out here and they'll be setting up left-handed guitars. I play left-handed.
Oh.
I'll be like, oh, can I play that one? Or they'll come over and they'll be like, hey man, we got a bunch of lefties out there for you. I'll come play them all. So, yeah, they have spare parts available, you know, if they need them. Replace anything that might be going awry with the guitar. They're going to do some buffing if necessary, you know, if there's anything not that great looking on the finish. If it's something we can buff out, we're going to go ahead and take care of that. But essentially, if it's not going to meet PRS specifications, then we'll make sure that it doesn't get delivered to the dealer. We want to make sure every single one of them isn't going to bounce back to us, as Paul says. You know, we don't want a boomerang. We want that guitar to go to the dealer, and we want the dealer to sell it to a guitar player, and we want that guitar player to say, this is my PRS. So then we step into sort of the most recent endeavor, which would be amplifiers and effects pedals. I believe it was around 2006 or 2007 that Paul Smith met Doug Sewell at the Dallas Guitar Festival, and Doug at the time was producing amplifiers out of his garage, and him and Paul sort of hit it off right away, and just became good friends. Their quest for tone seemed to be a similar quest, so they partnered up and said, "Hey, you want to build some amps for Paul Reed Smith Guitars," and thus the amplifier side of the company was born. We do have some cool new models that I think we released recently, the HDRX 20, along with the HDRX 50 and 100, were essentially a recreation of the Jimi Hendrix Woodstock touring circuit Marshall amplifier. So Paul had the opportunity with Doug and with some of our other R&D guys to take a look at one of Jimi Hendrix's personal touring circuit amplifiers, and you know, note for note, just able to break it down and what made it tick, what made it sound that way, and hence we created the HDRX amplifier, which has a super just wall to the wall sort of amplifier sound, very loud, very powerful. Along with some other amplifiers that we do, like the MT15, which is Mark Tremonti's signature amplifier. And then we also have the David Grissom 30 amplifier that's produced in here, right here in-house as well. So definitely try to keep the breadth of options available. So we try to make, you know, an American sort of inspired, clean sounding amp. We try to stick with like the British sounding sort of edge of breakup sort of amps. So we definitely have had our fair share of different amp models. Pedals as well is sort of our newest thing. Our 3 new pedals, the Mister Overdrive, the Wind Through the Trees dual optical flanger, and the Mary Cries optical compressor are 3 really high quality pieces of musical gear essentially. They're pedals, but we think that they do have the capacity to be used as, you know, studio gear, high-end studio gear. The compressor especially just creates a really great signal, just putting it right in front of your mixer essentially. We'll check all those electronics through this department essentially, pedals, amplifiers. We have some vocal booths set up here that are dead silent, and you can hear even the faintest hum or hiss coming from either an amplifier or a pedal. So if we do notice something like that, we have some very highly skilled electronics individuals here that can address any problems with the amplifier before it does get delivered to the dealer. So. We've got some, looks like some amplifier, HDRX 100s there. So those are wound, going to be soldered right in-house here, built right in-house. And that essentially wraps up everything that we have to see here in the PRS factory, from core and S2 and bolt-on guitars downstairs to the SEs upstairs, and then amplifiers and effects. So hope you all enjoyed it. It was fun.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, man.
Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. It's fun.
Do you know if the body blanks for the S2 it is a different wood selection from the cores, or?
They'll actually be the same, and we will use one-piece mahogany backs for the S2s and for the CEs. The only exception to that would be Carina backs and Swamp Ash backs are either 2 or 3 piece, essentially because you can't get the cuts of wood as wide.
Yeah.
The tree doesn't grow as large, so the part of wood that would be available wouldn't be as wide, whereas with a mahogany blank you can get a full guitar body out of one cut of wood.
Yeah.
So yeah, we use the same mahogany on S2, CE, and core, and we'll use a one-piece mahogany back in, I would say, most cases for all those guitars. I believe the mahogany for backs is different from the mahogany used for necks. We use African mahogany for guitar backs, bodies, and South American mahogany for necks.
Okay.
And I believe that has to do with a weight or density thing, just to sort of make sure that the guitar is not a neck diver, or it's comfortable to play and not too overly heavy. Every S2, to my knowledge, and I'm about 100% certain about that, is a solid mahogany back and is using the same cut of wood. It won't be the same thickness to start off with. It's going to depend on the model, essentially. But yeah, same cut of wood and same species of wood for mahogany backs.
Yeah.
Terminamos el Factory Tour y nos encontramos acá en el estacionamiento con un evento súper simpático que hacen, que se llama Autos y Cócteles. Qué buena combinación, ¿no es cierto? Bueno, a ellos les gusta hacer la combinación de traer autos bonitos no sé si son autos propios o arrendados, qué sé yo, pero traen autos y se toman un copetillo ahí los empleados de la empresa.
Either that or
We're going for a ride. Nos vemos en la próxima entrega del blog de Mister Overdrive.